Okay, hi everybody. Somebody asked me to do a tutorial on the base of the dummy. So here it is, a base of the dummy. I did this in a SketchUp program just to let you see the construction, and I'll show you the actual base later on. The material I personally have used is MDF, but you better off using plywood. Plywood would be much stronger. It's just that I had MDF lying around, and that's why I use MDF. If you know how to put together a shelf, then this is very simple, and it wouldn't be very difficult to do at all. What it is you just have a base at the bottom here, and then I just cut off the corners here and here so that you're not going to jam your foot into it when you do a side stance to a tanda into the dummy at an angle. You won't jam your toe into it. So basically, the bottom here is just a square rectangle. The size is you could just eyeball the size that you need. I'm not going to have an exact size for your plans because it's not really needed. It's pretty simple. So you have the base here, and then you just slap on one, two, three, four pieces of wood that surrounds the exact size of the dummy trunk that's going to go in here. The only difference is at the back of uh, the piece of wood here that goes to the back of the trunk. There is a few millimeters of space. The two sides and this side, I measure exactly the size of the dummy, which is say a 9 by 9, because I want these three sides to fit snug, and then this side in the back I want it to not fit so snug. Just leave a couple of millimeters. Why is so that when the dummy goes in the center and when you punch it from this side, there is a little bit of play and there is a little bit of room for the dummy to rock back and forth, and that's the most important. I'll go into that again later on. These are just angle brackets because there is not enough support. So of course, when you screw this together, you put glue as well, good carpenter's glue, and then the screws goes in here, and then on the back side, I put a whole bunch of angle brackets again to support this because there's a lot of power and weight being thrust into here when you're working on the dummy. Then at the bottom of the dummy, obviously, I put in the countersink all the screws to hold all the pieces. Now, these screws here at the bottom, I'll show you what that really is. So to show you what that is, I'll just go and delete this thing here, and you now see what's inside. Inside here, the most important about this dummy is this bunch of boards here that you measure this shape afterwards, and you can measure this, and then when you put the dummy into it, you can then now adjust the height of your dummy. Okay, now these boards, these four boards, are say glued together. Then you measure the proper height that you want the dummy to be at. And what is the proper height is that when you're in the Yi Ji Kim Yong Ma, in that stance, the arms should be, the top two arms of the dummy should be at the same height as your shoulder. So now, once you measure the height of the dummy and you know how many boards you want to put into it, then you can glue the boards together and drop them in. And note that one of the important thing is that you leave the top board. If there's one more board, let's say there's 5 boards. All right. So you would want to do is leave the top board not glued. I'll tell you that a little later on why that is. So now, let's say it took 4 boards, and that's the height that you want it to be at. So then you would put that all the way at the bottom, And then you would also glue this down at the bottom permanently. Once you glue this down at the bottom permanently, then you need to drive screws in from the side here. These screws from the side, these screws from the side, and then as well as these screws from the side. So once you did this, this whole structure is well secured. Otherwise, if you don't glue this to the bottom and then drive screws in, then you're only held together by these screws at the bottom, and even with glue and these screws at the bottom, it's not going to hold your base in solidly. It's still going to come off over the years. So when you have the adjustable boards inside the middle glued together and then screwed in from the side, from here you screw it in from the side, then you pretty much secure the whole thing. So the last board you don't want to glue down, and what happens is what you do with this is that from the bottom of this you put a couple of sticks in the middle. Let's say you find some like a shish kebab sticks like that. Not this big. They would be much smaller in actual size. These sticks would be much smaller, and what you do, and let's assume that this stick was very small. You would put the stick right underneath here, about not halfway, about just a little bit less or more than halfway. And let's just assume that this was a very small, like a not as small as toothpicks, not as big as a pencil, but I think a couple of shish kebab sticks will do. And then I just duct tape this underneath this whole board. And what happens, and this wouldn't be this long here. I'm not going to have time to do it perfectly, but let's say it would, you would be flushed with that so that it won't be sticking out when you put that in. Okay, and let's say that it wouldn't be this big. I'm only doing this because I don't have time to make it perfect. So what is the purpose of this? So that when you put the dummy on top of it, the dummy would rock back and forth. Okay, so now then this here, and technically speaking, you would have, you know, the dummy on top of this here, and the dummy would be on top of that, flushed. I made it a little bit small, but you kind of get the idea. So here, when you're going to be doing punches and whatever on your dummy, and since at the back of the dummy here on this piece of wood, there is a little bit of extra room for the dummy to rock back and forth. So when you put a little bit of pivoting sticks here, not completely center, a little bit further back, so that constantly at rest this dummy would be leaning forward slightly, just slightly. And when you punch at the dummy like this on the top, you punch at the dummy would have this play of weight that would move the dummy back just, you know, an inch or so, and it would rock back and forth. And at rest it would lean forward just ever so slightly that you can't really tell. And when you hit the dummy, it would rock backwards, and that would really simulate an actual moving weight, real weighted dummy, to feel the weight when you punch something. And that's why the dummy weighs as much as it should, you know, at around 100 pounds, so that it will simulate what happened when you push this weight around. When you punch somebody, there is a weight involved, that you're moving this weight back and forth. So this makes a lot of sense. So now once you do this, then the last piece you go and you put this also inside. I don't know if I can. Oh no, I don't know if I can do it. So you would then put this last piece inside here like this, and that will go like inside, and that's it. That is basically how I did it. I plan to in my dummy. I plan to make a cover and then just cover this and put a hinge here and make a cover here and then put a handle here, and this could be lifted up like a box for storage. You don't even have to cut this angle if you don't need to. This could very well be square like that, and then you could easily close this off and make a box out of it, and again make a lid here with a hinge on this side maybe, or maybe a hinge on that side, it doesn't matter, and then you can open this and close this, and then you can put your equipment inside of this. I think this method of building a dummy is the easiest and the most straightforward, and is the cheapest and best way to do it. I'll show you in the original. I have a piece of cloth underneath here. I put an old blanket I don't use. This blanket that I put under gives me a mobility that I can push this dummy everywhere in the room. If you have guests coming and if you had a closet, you can like push this all the way into a closet, because it's really just resting on a piece of blanket underneath, and that works out really well. This dummy stand has lasted me for about 10 years now, and it's only made of MDF, and it hasn't really fallen apart at all. Aside from that, occasionally you would maybe need to tighten the screws a little bit everywhere, and it works great. The design, as design goes, usually the simpler design it is, the better it will work. When people come up with elaborate dummy stands, it's usually very difficult to make, and usually the more complicated it is, the less useful it is. So for me, this works the best, and I'll go over here and I'll show you the actual dummy. Here's the dummy stand. The most unique thing about this is that I have this going on here. Obviously, you can see that this is one of the hinges supports for the dummy for the bottom if it were to be hung. So what it is I use this as a locking mechanism, so that I made a notch in my stand. Here you go. I made a notch in the stand so that this could be rotated as I need it. Why do I want my dummy rotated? For beginners, it's better to use this as a non-locking dummy, so that when you do your forms on the dummy, you are going to be concentrating on hitting the dummy correctly and not going to be hitting it with power, so that you can hit the dummy at the center and not concentrate on hitting the arms. Everybody likes to hit the arms really, really hard when you're a beginner, and that really is not good for your practice, because then you start to learn to hit it hard and your power is going sideways and not at the trunk of the dummy. So the pivoting the dummy is really good, so that you learn not to hit it hard. You learn your hand and angle and power placement, so that when you hit the dummy, you know that your power is going forward. If you keep hitting the dummy and the dummy keeps turning this way all the time, then you know that your power is not going at the dummy. You know that your power is only going into the arms, which is wrong. So that is good for the beginners. As well, I have a stick here, as you've seen, and using the top using the top hole here, I take my stick and I place my stick inside this hole. Well, as you can see here, the stick now is through the top of the hole. Normally that would be the support hose for the dummy to mount on the walls. And now this stick is used for my Batamdo and sword practices coming out of this stick. So the dummy being able to turn is very useful when I do this kind of practice with a stick and for my Batamdo practice. And then when I don't need it, I just put it back away. So here's when I don't need it, I just put it back in here. And the stick is in the back, and I just have yet to make a cover because it's really messy here in the back of my gloves and everything. I'm supposed to be making a cover for this and with a hinge so that all this junk just doesn't look so exposed. Here's the crack that you can see barely. There's a magazine inside. Between that wall, between this wall and the dummy, there's a magazine in there, so that when you hit the dummy, you can see that the dummy is rocking back and forth. Try to get it. So here, the dummy rocks back and forth, and that is very, very important that the dummy does rock back and forth. And once you've gotten the dummy form and you know how to apply your power straight into the trunk and not put the power into your arms, that is when you can then lock it. I don't suggest locking it as beginners, but once you know how to apply your power properly, then I will lock it so that then the dummy will not turn. And even as it being locked, you don't have a complete tightness of the lock. The dummy is allowed to swing sideways and pivot a little bit, so that it would give you also simulate a kind of a power that you can exert before it catches. And here it is, and that's it. Here's my dummy stands, and you can see these are the hinges here and the brackets on the side to just give it more strength. And I have, you can see all the way here, all the way there. There's brackets holding it. And these are the screws there on the side. These are the screws on the side here that goes into these boards that are inside. That is also glued down and then secured sideways, so that the entire thing is pretty much indestructible. It's not going to come apart. I had this for 10 years and I beat up on it every day, and it's not come apart yet. So I'm pretty sure it's going to work for you. And I'm only using MDF here because I had MDF, but if you use plywood, it would even be stronger. And you can see here the blanket here, the little kitty blanket, the polar fleece blanket that I have underneath, which will not scratch my floor, and I can push this around all over the room to not have to have the dummy in this corner if I don't want it to. And here you go. So, seeing how messy I was in that video, I decided to tidy up a little bit, and I went ahead and made this cover. Tidied up my stuff here. I put my two stabs here. I can rest my Batamdo here on the side, and I made a little cover here with the hinge at the bottom. As you can see, the hinge is there, and then I have all my gloves and mitts and everything all tidied up here, and then they look much nicer now. Now I can go to bed thinking that I'm actually neat when I'm not. And here is my stand. Hope you enjoyed this video, and see you next time. Bye bye.